What if I told you that the richest person in history isn't alive today? That their fortune makes today's tech titans look, well, like they're playing with pocket money. This is the story of a man who didn't just get into an industry, he became the industry, building a system so powerful it literally bent the world to his will.
So, who do you think it is? Right away, your mind probably jumps to names like Musk or Bezos, right? But nope, they aren't even in the same league. To find the real king, we have to go back in time, over a century ago. Just look at this. Seriously. When you adjust for inflation, John D. Rockefeller's fortune was over $400 billion. That's not just more than any single tech billionaire today, it's more than most of them combined. It's a number so huge it's almost hard to wrap your head around. That's the man, John D. Rockefeller, America's first ever billionaire. And his story, wow, it's a masterclass in obsession, in strategy, and in absolute ruthless control.
So how does anyone build a fortune that massive? The answer isn't about money. Not really. It's about a mindset. It all started with an obsession, one that was forged in the chaos of his childhood.
Rockefeller was born way back in 1839, and his life was anything but stable. His father was a traveling salesman, this unpredictable figure who was always coming and going, and that taught young John a really powerful lesson. The world is chaotic. And when you're faced with chaos, you crave one thing above all else: control. For Rockefeller, this became everything, his guiding light. It wasn't just about being in charge, it was about creating order where there was none, about mastering every single variable in his life.
And this obsession, it showed up from day one. At just 16, he gets his first job as a bookkeeper. But for Rockefeller, this wasn't about a paycheck. It was training. He learned to track every single penny, to understand every transaction. While other people saw money as something you spend, he saw it as a system, a machine that could be understood, mastered, and bent to his will.
And then, opportunity didn't just knock. It exploded. The American oil rush started, and Rockefeller was ready with a playbook that would become legendary and, well, pretty infamous. And this is where you see his genius. While thousands of people, the gamblers, rushed out to drill for oil, literally chasing luck in the dirt, Rockefeller played a totally different game. He was the strategist. He completely ignored the chaos of drilling and focused on the one single bottleneck that everyone had to go through: refining the oil. He knew if you control the process, you control all the profit. From that one single insight, he built this relentless four-step plan. First, control the bottleneck, refining. Second, he made secret backroom deals with the railroads to get cheaper shipping than anyone else. Third, he used those savings to drop his prices so low that his competitors just couldn't survive. And finally, when they went bankrupt, he'd just buy them up, one by one by one. Let's be clear, this wasn't business, this was conquest. And what came out of it was something the world had never, ever seen before: a near-total monopoly.
The result was just staggering. At its peak, his company, Standard Oil, controlled almost 90% of all the oil in the United States. 90%. That isn't market leadership, that's market ownership.
And that's not an exaggeration. Through this cold, calculated strategy, John D. Rockefeller had literally absorbed an entire American industry into his one company. But, a shadow that big never goes unnoticed for long.
That kind of power was bound to make some powerful enemies, and what happened next should have been the end of his empire. But instead, in this shocking twist, it was the very thing that made him the world's first billionaire. People were furious. The public outcry was deafening. Was this guy a captain of industry or a greedy monopolist crushing the American dream? Well, the U.S. government decided it was the second one, and it finally moved in to try and shatter his empire. So, in 1911, the Supreme Court brings the hammer down. Standard Oil is ordered to be dismantled, broken up into dozens of smaller companies. This was supposed to be his downfall, but just look at this timeline. 5 years later, he hits a brand new milestone.
So was this it? Was the Rockefeller system finally broken? Not even close.
You see, Rockefeller hadn't just built a company, he'd built this intricate web. When the government broke Standard Oil apart, they accidentally made him richer than ever. Why? Because he simply kept his personal shares in all of the new, supposedly competing companies. So as they grew, his personal fortune just exploded. And in 1916, he became something the world had never seen before: a billionaire.
But this is where the story takes its final, really fascinating turn. The man who spent his life accumulating this unimaginable fortune would spend his final years giving almost all of it away, creating one of the most complex legacies in history.
It's almost like he was two different people. On one side, you have the destroyer, the ruthless monopolist who just bled his competition dry. And on the other, you have the builder, the great philanthropist who basically funded modern medicine and started world-class universities.
The guy who had mastered money now started a new project, mastering his own legacy. He started pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into education, medicine, science, applying that same systematic, world-changing approach to giving money away that he had used to get it in the first place. And that really gets to the heart of it. Rockefeller's true genius wasn't just making money. It was the system. A system for control, a system for domination, and in the end, a system for creating a legacy. He proved that real power doesn't come from chasing luck, but from building a machine so powerful it eliminates luck entirely.
So we're left with this incredible story. He used his obsession with control to conquer an industry, and then used that same obsession to reshape our world for the better. And it really makes you wonder, if you had that same relentless, systematic drive, what kind of system would you build?